Nail some hammers. Who's ready to hammer a nail? Boo, boo. We don't do that here. We do things differently at Decrit. Hi, I'm Eric Schwartau. I'm the Director of Programming and Operations at Decrit, which is also known as the MA in Design, Research, Writing, and Criticism. We love words. That's why it's a long title. I am going to be your MC, so I'll be giving you a little lesson in how to MC. Am I doing a good job? Okay, great. Woo, okay, no heckling. This is an example of what we don't do. We don't do this. Not yet. A few more drinks. Okay, is everyone cool, calm, and collected? Okay, got a drink if you needed one. Live stream audience, hello from bed. I hope you're comfy, cozy. We're all out here wearing, nice clothes, making an appearance. But we really appreciate you being here. We hope you enjoy the show. Any family in the audience? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It can be kind of real family, chosen family. We broad idea of what family is here. It's New York. Friends. Yes, okay. What about some faculty? Do we have some faculty here? Okay, there we go. Enemies. Hopefully not me, but I have security on speed dial, so please behave. Well, I don't want to take up too much time. We've got so much to go through. I'm so proud of the class of 2023. We're only with them for 9 months, which is crazy. And then they leave and go do amazing things. And then we get a whole new crop. And that's just how my life works. And I miss them, everyone, so much. And, oh, wait, any alums in the house? Yes, alums. We love it when you guys come back. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to invite Molly Heinz, our program chair, to the stage, and let's start this off.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the School of Visual Arts Theater this evening for How to Nail a Hammer, our thesis symposium and book launch of the class of 2023. All right, class of 2023, and in SVA's Design Research, Writing, and Criticism program here in New York City. I am Molly Heinz, the program chair, and I want to thank you, Trilby. I want to extend a warm welcome, as Eric said, to the family and friends of our students, to our department faculty, and to our SVA community, our design network, and our intrepid live stream viewers. Thank you all for being present. It means a lot at this busy time of day and this busy time of year. So I want us to consider this time together as an escape from that busyness, as an opportunity to relax, to recharge, and reflect. So please sit back and settle in. We have a wonderful full program in store, and I'll be brief so we can get on with it. As we go through our program, I'd like to ask you to reflect on some words from the jazz musician Etienne Charles. When he premiered his composition San Juan Hill at the new Geffen Hall in Lincoln Center last October, Charles said, "We should always pay attention to who was where we are." Charles' quote has resonated with me this whole academic year because I've seen it in the work of our students. Today, you'll hear about research into histories that were swept away, appropriated, erased, or underappreciated. While we are here together right now, I'd also like to actively acknowledge the histories of this place. Not only stories of the recent past, like at San Juan Hill, just to the north, the vibrant neighborhood that was demolished to build Lincoln Center, but also think further back in time to remember the Lenape, the early caretakers of the island of Manhattan. We should always pay attention to who was where we are. It's a statement that I think is so relevant to how we aim to approach design research. We define design broadly, as you certainly will see today. We define it as anything human-made intended to serve a function. And then we aim to figure out how it is working and how we can get all around it, under it, into it, to understand its context, yes, but also to understand its consequences. The hard part is the how. In our program, we say we combine journalistic tools with humanities-based critical thinking, but how does that play out in the field and on the ground, really? Today, the students celebrate that process, the how-to, the alchemy of an observation becoming a research question, becoming an analysis, becoming an argument, and how to share it. I'd like to say an existential thank you to SVA President David Rhodes and Provost Christopher Cyphers for believing that this small program can engender big conversations that ripple out into the world. An enormous thank you to our fantastic faculty for making the magic happen in our seminar room with our 7 outstanding MA candidates and this admittedly ambitious 1-year intensive master's curriculum. It may seem like alchemy, but it's really the product of many hours of very hard work and a little bit of luck. So thank you, Alex, Adam, and Carrie, Lital, Margot, and Steve. We were fortunate to have the editors of the New York Review of Architecture in residence with us this year, working with our students on their writing, as well as the concept for this symposium and the associated publication that launches today. Thanks in particular to Nicholas, Marianella, Sammy, and Nick of NYRA. If you listen closely, you'll hear almost all of the people I just listed in today's program. A heartfelt thank you to Chi Proman of TED Talks for generously holding a session with the students to help them polish their presentations. Immense gratitude goes to alum and pro-producer Brooke Vigut for masterful orchestration behind the scenes and on site for today's event. Thank you, Brooke. And none of this would be possible without our multifaceted, multi-talented Director of Programming and Operations, Eric Schwartow, who lucky you, will be hearing a lot from as today's MC. But first, I want to introduce a critical, in all senses of the word, critical and essential member of our department, faculty member Alex DeLuz, who is our lead thesis advisor and who will say a few words about our thesis process.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I think clapping is good for your health, right? And these folks deserve it. So one more time, a round of applause for the graduating class of 2023. If they can get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to worry about the answers, says a character in Thomas Pynchon's novel, Gravity's Rainbow. So, what is the right question? How do you nail a hammer? Is that like needling a thread? Or gunning the jump? We live in a perplexing world. Deny it if you can. In this program, we start with the idea that how we live, where and what with, is all by design. If you join this program, you may arrive curious, ready for a change, looking for a challenge. But however you arrive, you start by asking questions. Questions drive journalism, and they put the pro in the thesis process, which this cohort is about to nail in front of your very eyes. So, what is this thesis process like? Well, it's a choose-your-own-adventure over 2 very dense, fast-paced semesters. How many months was it, Eric? 9. 9, count them. You begin by crafting an area of inquiry, and then you explore it, eventually landing on a set of concerns that are entirely your own. Coursework in research writing, cultural theory, design history, issues in urban design, among others, support the journey. I want to thank all our faculty, especially thesis advisors, for their wisdom and their work this year. In the spring, You dive deep into the art of storytelling. You build an article for publication and produce a podcast exploring aspects of your topic. Both the podcast and the article are fueled by questions that matter. And you'll hear all about this tonight. But maybe the coolest outcome is the treasure trove of research that you accumulate along the way. It has a tendency to spill out into great projects after you leave. So let me rephrase what I just said. The coolest outcome is that you are joining a growing family of thinkers, makers, and writers who shine a critical light on design out in the real world. Yes, the real world. It continues to baffle. It continues to do harm. Sometimes it even continues to bring joy. But thanks to the work of our beloved alumni, which is a term that now applies to this amazing cohort, we are better equipped to face it. So with no further delay, the attraction you've been waiting for.
And first up, we have,
How to do something new. Give yourself 5 years to suck at it. Tell people you're trying something out. Let yourself panic. Drink a lot of water. Ask yourself at every stage of the process what you can improve now and what you can improve next time. Remember that most of the time, the feedback people give you is not about you or your efforts at all, but about how they want to be seen. Listen only to what is helpful.
Okay, I'll get that right next time. That was Anne Elizabeth Moore, faculty member. And first up, we have Emily Kwok with How to Dehumanize Parenthood.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, really quickly before I begin, I'm going to ask for some audience participation. Can you put your hands in the air for me and just wave them around a bit? Wonderful, thank you. Now you can put them down. I did that really just because I want you to be able to leave this and tell your friends that at least one of the speakers moved you tonight, and that was me. So I'll get started. I started at the beginning of this year wanting to know more about the convergence between human bodies and technology. I am, after all, a child of the 90s. I graduated college during a pandemic, and I said goodbye to some beloved classmates of 4 years on a computer screen. Dating for me usually begins by opening an app on my phone, and for work, I spend more of my time interacting with strangers online than I do seeing my longtime friends in real life, which I admit is pretty difficult for someone like me who is obsessed with people and proximity. Whether it's the fault of the internet, the phone, or a change in societal norms, I'm not quite sure, but I am interested in this ever-changing game of communication, how saying what we want to say is always in motion. Today, I'm talking about a tool that updates the status of a person to their most loyal followers at their earliest stage of life. That is the baby monitor. And not just any baby monitor, a smart monitor. In February, I talked to my friend Nadia, who recently had a baby and had purchased something called a smart sock. It's a lightweight, wearable baby monitor that was released in 2015 by a baby tech company called Owlet. The sock is a strip of woven fabric that's been folded and sewn to wrap around the foot of a baby. Embedded in the fabric is a small white disc. This disc is a pulse oximeter, a medical-grade tool that reads a baby's heart rate and oxygenation levels. Real-time data from the sock is sent to a local hub, which feeds into Owlet's storage cloud and then directly to a parent's phone, notifying a parent of any irregularities in breath. When I asked her why she bought it, Nadia said, "My thought process in preparing to be a mom was to give myself the best shot, and that felt like outsourcing some of these responsibilities to other people or devices." Many people can relate to how Nadia feels. The responsibilities of parenthood can be incredibly overwhelming, and for the price of $300, the Smart Sock presents a promising solution to answer all the mysterious questions about baby health and soothe the anxieties of a parent. During early days of marketing, CEO Kurt Workman raved about the sock's ability to detect and prevent SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome, a term used to describe the undiagnosable death that happens when a baby randomly stops breathing. The sock promises to notify you whenever your baby's oxygenation levels are unstable, making it a go-to product for any concerned parent. With stakes so high, the monitor nearly sells itself. Within 6 years of its founding, Owlet went public, valuing at over $1 billion for a single product. The baby tech company's success, however, is not entirely without critics. For starters, most pediatricians don't recommend the smart monitor to parents. When asking Dr. Noreen Womack why, she responded, "I've seen parents who are anxious. They want to do everything right. Instead of checking on the baby, they're just checking on the monitor." The medical field's hesitancy to endorse smart monitors poses a serious question. Do advanced monitors create a false sense of security? And what happens when a product that we've grown to rely on fails? When it comes to reducing the risk of SIDS, the majority of healthcare professionals, along with the CDC, recommend simple practices summarized in educational campaigns released during the 1990s. These programs preceded the biggest decrease of SIDS-related deaths in the United States, from 130 deaths to 38 per 100,000 babies, with the majority of deaths reported from Indigenous, Black, and Pacific Islander populations. When talking to Victoria Suggs, a doula's assistant and founder of Sisterly, a women's health nonprofit, she mentions how products like the Smart Sock often are inaccessible to young families due to the hefty price tag. For many marginalized communities, high-end monitors are not even on the radar. In Maria Hernandez Park in Brooklyn, I spoke with a woman named Rosa, who works all day selling drinks with her baby. When I asked her whether she relied on any form of modern monitoring device at home, she looked completely confused, not knowing what I meant by the word monitor. Her response indicates a gap in educational resources available to parents and prompts a deeper question: who gets to benefit from these rapid advancements? In October 2021, the FDA warned Owlet that the Smart Sock was being marketed as a medical device without proper FDA certification. Claiming to help parents self-diagnose a baby who might be at risk for SIDS is considered dangerous, as parents are receiving information without the help of a medical professional to discern readings. Since then, Owlet has released the Dream Sock, which follows FDA standards, the main difference being a change in the app's user interface. Instead of showing live stats of the baby's vitals, the Dream Sock only shows insights related to sleep patterns and overall health readings. Even so, the emerging field of baby tech is booming. With products like the Snoo, a smart bassinet that rocks your baby to sleep, or a smart monitor from Cubo AI that uses AI technology to interpret the cries and facial expressions of your baby, it's a utopia for tech-hype parents who fully believe in the idea that technology makes everything better, faster, and more efficient. Parents want the best for their children. And for the upper middle class, adoption of new baby products seems to be the best way to raise a kid. This sentiment isn't necessarily new. It turns out that the baby monitor has always been riding the crest of technology, following the commercialization of radio and spurred by a tragic kidnapping. In 1932, the 20-month-old baby of Charles and Anne Lindbergh was kidnapped in the dead of night and never seen alive again. The Lindbergh kidnapping was disturbing news, the type to take over headlines, and for months, the American public was in complete shock. As a response to this reaction, Zenith Radio Corporation commissioned Isamu Noguchi, a designer known for his sculptural set designs at the time, to help design the first baby monitor called the Radio Nurse. The Radio Nurse is an oddity that traverses the landscape between what is human and what is technology. The form was surprisingly humanistic for the 1930s. Made out of brown bakelite, it's an elegant yet eerie object that represents the quickening of information across space and time. A summary written by the Victoria and Albert Museum in London suggests that it was influenced by the Japanese kendo mask. Kendo being a sport Noguchi was familiar with since a young age. A photo from the Noguchi archive in Queens shows the artist wearing a traditional kendo uniform at age 7. The designer moved frequently throughout the country with his mother and sister, and seldom saw his father, Yonejiro Noguchi, who had left his mother for another woman in Japan. Isamu and Yonejiro had a bitter and distant relationship, and it's with this knowledge that I wonder whether the aesthetic of Radio Nurse was inspired to look more as a protector rather than a caretaker based off of personal relationships. The mask uses horizontal stripes to shield one's face. It's a design that distorts facial expression while protecting oneself from the blows of the opponent. The application of these stripes onto an immobile object in the shape of a head results in an artifact that is both warm and repelling, inviting yet cold. It reminds us of the contradictions in our humanity, something that couldn't be communicated through the geometric aesthetics of the modern style in the 1930s. Since Noguchi's time, the monitor has come a long way in both form and capability. Instead of looking like a human, it's now worn by one. The reasoning behind the product, however, remains the same. It's a symbol of the never-ending worries of a parent and our attempts at designing certainty into the inherently risky and complex task of parenthood. In Prospect Park, a young father named Tom mentions, "I don't know if the monitor necessarily relieves any anxiety or is more of a symptom of anxious parents." His response is thought-provoking, as if to say, the tools we make today are indicative of the perspective our society has towards relationships as a whole. To which Dr. Womack simply says, "There's nothing wrong with more information. Just know that it won't solve all your problems. Most of the time, all you need to do is walk into the room." A big thank you to the SVA faculty, and for those who participated, thank you very much.
Ow, ow! Give it up one more time for Emily Kwok. Way to go! Oh my God, I'm gonna give you a hug. I'm giving you a hug. I put on deodorant right before this. I knew I would be giving hugs. Any babies in the audience? I think that's for the best. I know I'm not supposed to ask this, but any plans for children ever?
Depends on who's asking, but currently no. Currently no.
Currently no. Okay, we'll stay with no right now. That was amazing. I've really loved running into you on the subway because you live in Ridgewood. I live in Bushwick, so we take the L. And I've run into Emily a few times. You came from Utah, right? So how's the year been in New York?
I love it. It's been super fun. It was a big change, like really big for me, but I really like New York. It's a fun place to be.
I agree. I think everyone else agrees too, right? Yeah, and so what drove you to want to do your thesis on babies? Because I know you started, I guess you kind of talked about that at the beginning, but you were going in like a different direction. Why babies?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. I was like confused halfway through writing my thesis. I was like, oh shoot, this is transformed into something. I really was just, at first, so I first started off wanting to research wearables and like avant-garde wearables, like very high fashion, futuristic ones. And the more I did research, the more I was like I felt super out of my realm. And I was like, oh, I need to return to something that I know is true to me, true to the place where I'm from. I mean, Utah is very well known for having lots of big families. So, so I was like, I feel like that's something that I can actually dig deep into and relate to. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I learned a lot as not being a parent. But yeah, well, thank you so much, Emily. It's been great having you. And that was an incredible presentation. So give it up one more time for Emily. As watch her walk away. And yeah, I think, yeah, okay.
How not to finish a cathedral. Just make sure your ambitions exceed your abilities.
How to stay sane when everyone around you is insane. Redefine your definition of sanity to suit the occasion. Saying it is so makes it so.
That actually wasn't Stephen Heller talking, just FYI. That was, I think that was Emily. Thank you, Nicholas Kemper and Stephen Heller, for your contributions. These how-tos are in the class publication that you can receive on the way out, just FYI. They are contributions from faculty. Next up, we have How to Mobilize the Labor of Love with Jesse Sun. Give it up for Jesse.
Okay, guys, it's my turn. I'm going to move you by my language, my thesis topic. Okay, hi everyone, I'm Jessie Sun from China. I'm standing here as a graduate and also a single person, being called a leftover woman. No one ever asked me how is my single life. Instead, people ask me almost restlessly, when would I marry? They also tried so hard to persuade me to have children as soon as possible, despite data showing that women, on average, are happier without children or a spouse. However, funny? It's true. Okay. However, during my second interview with my sister, she told me I would never wish it happened to you because since I can't free myself from the vulnerability of motherhood. She understands my wish to have at least 2 children because we embraced so much love from our family, rather than the public telling me, your future children will care for me when you're old. What Lily said leads to one crucial part of my thesis that I will be sharing with you today. How China designs womanhood by mobilizing motherhood. I will be presenting my thesis by investigating the 3 key questions. Who constructs the womanhood embodied in the concept of motherhood in China? How has media played a role in constructing the public image of womanhood? How does the public view influences women's lives? Take the traditional Chinese wedding stand chair made 1,063 years ago as my entry point. It is a human-powered wooden vehicle used during the wedding ceremony for transporting the bride from her natal house to her groom house. It not only symbolizes the action of the bride's return home, a place where she will subordinate herself to her husband and also her parents-in-law for the rest of her life. It also symbolizes the bride's identity transformation from a single woman to a good wife and a loving mother, a term inherited from the traditional philosophy of Confucianism and regulated again in the outline for women's development in China from 2021 to 2030. The outline stipulates that China will further improve women's reproductive health by attempting to take them back to the domestic role rather than encourage them to enter the workforce, as in the one-child policy. So, what are the differences between the representation of womanhood in the one-child policy in 1979 and the current 3-child policy announced in August 2022 to another statewide policy to regulate childbirth? One of the most striking aspects of the one-child policy is that women were placed at the center of the media and played a central role in its implementation. The woman always has a round face, thick eyebrows, big eyes, and strong body. All these heroic appearances and masculine characters reflect women's emancipation from the household to the public workforce. Conversely, if women didn't go to work, people will see women as unproductive, less progressive, and unemancipated. Since then, women were collectively awakened and recognized their social roles with the increasing wage labor. So what does womanhood look like now? In a public announcement, Better and Better, the woman was shown on the edge of the frame, touching her pregnant belly with a smile. The caption became more and more lively and happier, convinced the nation in China's biggest family reunion holiday that more children will bring more happiness to a family. What it didn't mention is who will be responsible for the tremendous labor of giving birth and parenting. Let's take a look at these 3 official stamps issued after China ended its 3 decades-long one-child policy to tackle its demographic issues. The mother monkey holding her 2 babies marked China's shift from a one-child to a 2-child policy. It can be seen as a way to spread awareness and a symbolic representation of the government's desire for families to have more babies. As Jianzhang Liang, an expert in Chinese population said, throughout history, achieving economic growth by lowering fertility rates is unnecessary. His words echo the state's policy that more babies can generate more prosperity. When I observe what is being presented by this media, I ask myself, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? Like the marginalized woman in the announcement, the critical edge of these stamps comes from the explicit fantasy of having more babies and implicit labor distribution in parenting from pregnancy, childbirth, and the kids' upbringing, let alone the tremendous emotional labor throughout the whole journey, a term coined by Alia Rusa Hawkshaw in her 1983 book, The Managed Heart. This setup pushes me to research how visible and invisible parenting labor is distributed and practiced in a family. Xiao Li is a working mother who shares nearly half of the financial burden and also mainly caring for her son. She told me, of all the 16 books on parenting I read, only 1 targeted fathers, and the book title is Fathering from the Fastland, Practical Ideas for Busy Dads. Is this literary rhetoric intentional? Is it further prioritizing male society role, though it may intend to build an equal general parenting landscape within the family? To explore further, I interviewed her husband, and I want to know how he perceived the role of a father. He shared that for him, the father, the man of the house, is responsible for providing financial backbone to ensure family stability. That's why Fei Huang, a researcher exploring stay-at-home fathers in China via examining the media, she stated that one of the common themes of the Chinese drama is that all men will go back to work in the end, which signifies paid work is still considered to be central to men's identities. In 2021, Xuan Li, a psychologist on fatherhood in contemporary China, verified that though the increasing appearance of fathers' involvement in Chinese societies, a father can act as a resource for money as well as social and cultural capital, influencing the child's outside connections. As reported in the most issue of the Blue Book of Women, only 7.5% of Chinese parents care for their children together. Chinese women still bear the main responsibility of domestic work and nurturing care. That's why the social norm and also the labor distribution turned motherhood into a combat zone that women struggle in and fall. That's why most Chinese women today opt out of motherhood and are eager to distinguish themselves from the image of a housewife and a good mother. Yinghe Li, a Chinese sociologist, asserts housewives want to go out to work is not only for equal status, but also for self-actualization. During my whole thesis writing and research process, my writing was always seen as big, so big and dense. When a term was repeated to me almost in every piece of feedback, I began to question the term big. Now I appreciate a lot. If there's anything, it must be big. The composition of womanhood is the biggest thing I know, as shown in the multi-layer sketch from my thesis advisor. The complexity of womanhood in the context of China and my current discoveries encourage me to carry on my project and continue examining how does the over-construction of motherhood and less construction of fatherhood make it challenging to discuss the possibility of separating motherhood and fatherhood culturally, socially, politically, ideologically in China. I can't wait to use what I have learned from the Decrete program to figure out the myth of womanhood. That is my identity, and the identity concerns half of the world. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Jessie Sun. Thank you, Jessie. Thank you. Wow, we're going to have to get Fathering from the Fast Lane for the Design Research Library. We're going to teach a class on it next fall. And maybe you can teach it. Okay, so leftover women, that term. Oh my gosh.
Confuse me or bother me? No.
Yeah,
I'm standing here very confident and powerful.
Does this look like a leftover woman to you?
No.
Absolutely not. So, but I was getting chills during that, honestly. It's such a powerful presentation. But you're going back to China now. You're leaving us.
Yes. But I will come back next year. And also I will stay here for another month. And Emily and I will drive to Utah, drive to Santa Fe.
Okay.
Together.
Okay. Are we all invited? Yeah. We're getting a bus.
Still extra space for you.
Okay. What kind of car?
Emily, what kind of car?
Okay, we'll figure that out. Sorry, we gotta move on. Sorry, asking weird questions. Thank you so much, Jessie. It's been amazing. That was an incredible presentation. Give it up one more time for Jessie Sun.
How to linger at a French cafe in Brooklyn. Oh, she comes frequently, zipping a mental cage of loss and abuse in and around the furniture. Keep the baby away. The dog too. What does she want again? Lock the door. Wait artfully, impatiently, for discomfort to dissipate, for pastries and a gurgling espresso machine instead. She's rifling indictments which don't all make sense, and it's depressing our foamed milk. She's pungent. Look at her. She needs way more than she wants. Sit with me. Ask her about life. Now, she's on ultra spin cycle and blasting shards of a mirror I can barely hold. It feels like we're running fingers along the rusty edge of a meat knife. What's your favorite color of nail polish? We stop. We breathe. 2. She has 2 favorite colors, and her name is Naomi.
Thank you, Alex. And next up we have How to Stay Cool with Auston Gonzalez.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Austin, a client advisor at the luxury fashion brand Burberry that has been grappling with an internal tension caused by working in this industry. For those of you who don't know, client advisor is a pretty term for sales associate. If you walk into my store located in Midtown East on Billionaires Row, you'll be greeted and assisted by either me or someone in the same position. I'm the one to guide you through the floors with expert advice regarding your style and product needs. As someone who hosts VIP appointments and sends clients to runway shows, there's a serious theatrical element to how I operate in the face of luxury. How I present myself in vastly different ways when under the bright lights of a sales floor is reminiscent of a show's acts. Whether it's following uniform and grooming guidelines, filtering my conversations in the way I talk, showing products in a certain way, or running through the store preparing champagne in the private appointment rooms, I sacrifice some of my personal interests and identity to fit this character. My props are carefully arranged with attention to spacing. This is to avoid overwhelming a client with a lot of products that might clash, and saving the most expensive product for reveal from the back to evoke a sense of rarity and desire. We even have branded ice cubes saved for special occasions. These are classic acts in a luxury scene. A tight direction that comes from a set of standards designed to embody the specific lifestyle and language of a brand. It was sociologist Irving Goffman who posed the idea that our social lives are essentially a series of performances influenced by the different social contexts in which they take place. In his book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, he makes an important distinction between front stage and backstage behaviors that we engage in. The front stage refers to how we perform in front of an audience, and the backstage refers to what we do without an audience. This was something I was never actively aware of in my profession. But after reading this in our cultural theory course in the first semester, I began to question everything. At the time, I was researching sustainability in luxury fashion and came across a pretty clear obstacle. There's no universal definition for luxury. It quickly became apparent that luxury is an evolving thing. In a 2021 Forbes business article, the writer states, in the past, the word luxury meant the highest quality products, the highest status, and great in-store experiences. That definition is still true, and there are many consumers for whom that will always be the only definition of luxury. But consumers are changing, retail is changing, and the very definition of what luxury means is changing for a lot of consumers, especially younger ones. Now, there are other values that mean luxury to consumers but don't fit the traditional definition of the word. As someone who hears that isn't luxury, or how can we make that more luxury on a daily basis, it's clear that the set of behaviors I adhere to are largely consistent across luxury stores and brands and make up our traditional cultural understanding of the concept. To upend these behaviors would articulate this shift and create a more accurate definition for today. Cases where a store is still luxury, but isn't just a cleanly edited environment to cater to the elite. I had one store in mind as a case study because it sells some familiar brands and practices some of these behaviors, but overall doesn't behave like any typical luxury store we know. Located on Lexington Avenue and East 30th Street in, quote, a district chocolate block of nail parlors and Indian restaurants, the building itself is uninviting, imposing neoclassical architecture from the early 1900s. It has a wealthy appearance, but private wealth, like it requires a membership to enter. A colonnaded limestone facade displays the store name and address in fine print. A lack of indication for what its founder, Rei Kawakubo, calls the beautiful chaos within. The brushed gold metal letters read like they're on a plaque. Dover Street Market, New York. This 20,000 square foot space was previously home to the New York School of Applied Design for Women, and is clearly one that was not originally intended for retail. DSM has 7 floors and a basement that all have individually created environments from artists and designers to showcase their various brands and products. It's difficult to see from the photo I took here, but the floors are organized by designer, not by having the most expensive products on the top floor, for example, which is a classic move in luxury retail, and rather a general collection of ideas that doesn't follow a clear theme. I took a more detailed approach to giving a full rundown of the space in a podcast that I produced about the complete in-store experience. But to bring you inside, it's important that we start in the single glass elevator that pierces all 7 floors in the center of the space. It was the only non-negotiable for Kawakubo when renovating the building prior to opening, and literally displays visitors like a product for others to see and perform alongside each other. I should also mention the space is constantly changing. Floor setups and collections are completely refreshed twice a year, with some installations changing weekly. These are two of its installations on the 5th floor, adjacent to each other but clashing in terms of atmosphere and emotion. Color versus concrete, adult versus child, the list goes on. Rei Kawakubo, pictured on the left, is the famed Japanese fashion designer known for creating the collective brand Comme des Garçons decades prior. And along with her life and business partner Adrienne Jaffe, they opened the original DSM in London in 2004. It took inspiration from a store called Kensington Market, which was an eclectic and bohemian type of store from the late 20th century in London that rented out stalls to people selling products. It was described as a cultural hub that mixed a variety of backgrounds and interests, welcoming punks and emerging designers, along with anyone curious. DSM's New York space opened in 2013, at the time being the 4th location and now one of 8 locations worldwide. You don't need the full rundown of the designers' backgrounds and the history of the brands to tell this isn't the average Neiman Marcus you walk into with a clear way of navigating it. It's a bit uncomfortable, and even challenging at some points. Rather than mimic a specific lifestyle from Comme des Garçons, which is the umbrella brand for the store's concept, it's like a collage of vastly different designs and desires. In a conversation with author and architecture expert Carrie Jacobs, she explained, with Kawakubo it's less predictable. It's about the collective energy of contradictory approaches and visual languages, not some seamless immersion in one tightly edited version of good taste. Kawakubo has notably been praised as a deconstructionist designer. It was specifically design writer Dayon Sujic who stated that Kawakubo deconstructs the language of clothing, reducing it to its constituent elements, fabric, cut, and detail. She's interested in the way the clothes work rather than their supposed meaning. I took this as a cue to deconstruct Overstreet Market, reducing it to its architecture, selection, and performance as expressive subchapters for the writing. This in theory would reflect how DSM, and hence luxury fashion, might work, rather than any supposed meanings. I had conversations with retail expert Iberi Anokute, who noted how today's popular retail elements like store-within-store concepts seen at department stores in the United States were likely cued by DSM's interpretation of the concept. S.T. Luke, a project manager for this staircase, called the biotopological scale-juggling escalator, one of the only permanent installations originally commissioned by the owners, stated how DSM and Rei Kawakubo take a playful yet serious approach to the overall design, operating between the two. Recalling the fact that Kawakubo herself was the theme of the 2017 Met Gala, the published book about the actual exhibit titled Rei Kawakubo Comme des Garçons, Art of the In-Between, became an important source. It explains how her fashion designs have deconstructed the logic of cultural binaries by having them communicate and in many cases clash. A good example is the idea high versus low, which is intended to explore the space between elite and popular culture. To reflect on this, one of her collections on display combined tutus and leather jackets, which she describes as Harley-Davidson loves Margot Fontaine. The idea of the in-between is not only the essence of her work, including DSM, but also the current direction that consumer interests are pointed toward. At DSM, you can find $14,000 Italian-made dresses from Gucci, a setup not very different from the photo of Burberry's careful displays from earlier, steps from $40 screen-printed t-shirts with heavy branding from New York skate brand Supreme. There's that dialogue between high and low, between binaries. The overt architectural gestures, like the piercing glass elevator and the yarn-bombed columns that are importantly non-load-bearing, staff performances that are aloof and without a uniform, and an exclusive yet widely varying selection of clothing are just several ways that DSM upends typical luxury standards. It blurs the line between a multitude of dichotomies. You aren't always sure whether something is designed simply to push you to buy a product, which is the classic purpose in a traditional retailer, or completely random and not related to the product at all. But the idea of luxury is never called into question here. It's rather blown up for reinterpretation. Goffman's idea of the front stage versus backstage behaviors that we engage in is the central dichotomy for this research. that we can further break down into the playful versus serious, high versus low, and business versus creativity. The list of binaries continues. The in-betweenness explored in all of these is how DSM works, and overall what makes it a go-to for shoppers and visitors of all interests. In essence, what makes it cool. And it starts with Rei Kawakubo's philosophy. I can't say I've resolved the tension of putting on an act to close a sale, but I'm rather much more aware. This is not to say the traditional understanding of luxury doesn't work or shouldn't apply to today. But this new way of looking at it through DSM is also now relevant for a lot of consumers. It's not necessarily the store I care so strongly about, but rather the way it works that I appreciate from the outside, because it's successful but doesn't always play into the idea of class distinction and a sort of utopian experience given to whoever can afford it. That itself shows a current shift in the industry. As Rei Kawakubo puts it, finding the right balance between creative and commercial has always been my work. The two are not necessarily opposed. Don't take anything too seriously, but not jokingly either. Be unique, but be part of a larger cause. Be creative, but also mean business. Always explore the in-between. That's how you stay cool. Thank you.
Give it up one more time. Auston Gonzalez, congratulations. Here, give me a hug. Why not? Am I standing in the right place? Okay, great. I was given a mark, but I just get a little lost. Too excited. Auston, okay, question that's on everyone's lips. Can we get a discount at Burberry?
Text me after this, Eric.
Okay, I will. And who are you wearing?
I'm wearing Uniqlo, head to toe, and then the shoes are from Dover Street Market.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, you want to keep it casual. It's about high-low, like you were talking about it. And you were the kind of resident Gen Zer of the year. I mean, at least that's what kind of kept getting said. I don't know. I didn't do the math on everyone else and whether they are Gen Z or not. But what does that mean to you, being Gen Z, or the representative Gen Z, or how do you rep Gen Z?
That's a great question, Eric. I don't know. For some reason, I felt like I was just a part of one big group, and I didn't feel like a Gen Z at times, which was actually very relieving. A lot of times in my profession, I'm like the younger person who's not as experienced or doesn't have as much knowledge about certain things. So it was just really nice for everybody to be a part of kind of one big collective group.
Yes, break down those generational barriers. It is not a war. Though boomers do need to let go of their money, okay? We need to buy homes, us millennials. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm getting off track here. Auston, that was really incredible. Thank you so much. You've done so much great work, and this really came together beautifully. So thanks a lot. Give it up one more time for Auston. How's everyone doing? We doing good? We doing good? You are allowed to just go to you can't leave, but you can go to the bathroom or you can get a drink. Everyone will know you did it because of the way this theater is designed. We're going to write a research paper on that next. Anyway, just FYI. So stay relaxed. We got a few more to come.
How to be a tourist in your own city or town. 1. Always look up at the tall buildings, and also the short buildings. 2. Take photos of things you can't explain, like ghost signs and eccentric businesses, and post them on social media. 3. Pick random destinations, a monument, a bridge, or a bus depot, and walk to them, just for the thrill of the journey. 4. Ask someone how to get there, anywhere, if only to see if people still know how to give directions.
Okay, thank you, Carrie Jacobs. Next up, we have How to Sell Youth Culture with Ian Beckman-Regan.
Thanks, everyone. Imagine you're in university and you just made a new friend. getting to know each other, you go out for drinks, go to concerts, introduce him to your other friends. Now, think about how you'd feel after learning he's actually a researcher sent by Nike to document the youth culture of your city, and you're his case study. This is a true story told to me by Ruta Ribeiro, a former cultural marketing manager for Nike. Hi, everyone. My name's Ian, and today I'm going to tell you a little story about brands, youth culture, and identity. Brands are this crazy thing, right? It feels like they're everywhere all the time. In fact, the average American sees 4,000 to 10,000 ads per day. They're plastered across our towns and cities, on our phones, and in our homes on TV. Messages telling us how to think and act, what to buy. It's almost as if they're following us. Brands reinforce the myth that identity is a lifelong project constructed in part by consumerism. But behind the shiny veneer of marketing, brands are filled with contradictions. These paradoxes are all around us. Brands advertise self-expression while selling conformity. They celebrate co-creation, but in reality are in the business of control. And they promote social causes while obscuring their ethical ambiguities. From a young age, we're taught to be ambivalent about the consequences these tensions have on our identity. So what happens when the teen on the street and the teen in the ad lock eyes? Who's being made by who? Stuck in a vicious cycle, youth culture and consumerism are deeply intertwined. Today, teens and brands are interdependent. But this wasn't always the case. It was invented. In fact, we can look back in history and pinpoint a specific moment in time when consumerism invented the American teenager. Let's go back to the 1940s. Photographer Nina Lean's 1944 photo essay for Life magazine begins with this line: "There's a time in the life of every American girl when the most important thing in the world is to be one of a crowd of other girls and to act and speak and dress exactly as they do. This is the teen age." The word teenager was first published only a few years earlier in a 1941 issue of Popular Science magazine. World War II was nearing its end, ushering in a new era of affluence in the United States. For the first time in the nation's history, more than half of young adults completed high school. Meanwhile, the rise in part-time jobs during and after the war meant teens had spare change in their pocket and a hunger to spend it. By the end of the decade, the buying power of American teens reached $8 billion. Music, movies, candy, comics, fashion, beauty, youth culture, and the teen consumer were born. Brands positioned the teenager as distinct from children and distinct from adults. A new market founded on the pursuit of defiance and authenticity. The teen is the ultimate symbol of experimentation and rule breaking. And I love this movie poster from 1948. The tagline reads, "Hot rod teenagers living on the razor edge of danger, stumbling into crime, tumbling into love, too mixed up to know what they're doing." Case in point. The invention of the teen consumer proved marketing's power not only to manufacture desire, but also to create images that define mass culture, reinforcing what's considered normal and acceptable. In this case, being white, skinny, and heterosexual, or as sociologist Talcott Parsons, who coined the term youth culture, puts it, the bad boys and the glamour girls. 17 magazine, launched in 1944, was one of the earliest publications to commercialize youth culture. The key innovation to 17's success was its mastery of the feedback loop. Teach companies all about teen preferences while shaping teens' desires for those very same brands. Conformity sold as self-expression. And this wasn't theoretical. It was a very specific role pioneered by the magazine's promotional director, Estelle Ellis, inventor of an influential marketing campaign named Tina, the prototypical teenage girl. Tina transformed the idea of the teen generation into a market personification, a composite based on the magazine's readership. 17 surveyed teens' hobbies, their anxieties, and their spending habits, and then flipped these findings, distributing them to advertisers, retailers, and manufacturers, not unlike today's data economy. From the start of the teen market revolution, businesses like 17 saw youth culture as a lucrative and quantifiable market that could be sold a predetermined identity. In the teen search for self, brands tell her to choose from the catalog. But teens have always been nimble. Using new media and technology to push the edges of culture, teens influence brands, and then brands sell it back to them in a perpetual cycle of influence. Now, we're going to jump forward in time to present day, and I'll demonstrate how this feedback loop, pioneered by 17 magazine, is still very much alive today, and perhaps even stronger than ever. I want you to think about this. You don't need to be a teenager to be sold youth culture. I'll say it again, slightly differently. Youth culture is sold to all of us. Nike understands this better than anyone. In a 1992 Harvard Business Review profile, Nike co-founder Phil Knight said, "For years, we thought of ourselves as a production-oriented company, meaning we put all our emphasis on designing and manufacturing the product. We've come around to saying that Nike is a marketing-oriented company, and the product is our most important marketing tool. And it's clear that it's working. For the past 12 years, Nike has won the title of American teens' favorite footwear and clothing brand by a wide margin, according to one of the largest teen market research surveys in the country. So just how big is this marketing juggernaut? Today, Nike's empire is worth an estimated $193.5 billion US dollars. To put it in perspective, they sell 25 pairs of sneakers every second. By the time I'm finished with this presentation, Nike will have sold 15,000 pairs of sneakers worth approximately $660,000. But Nike doesn't just sell sneakers and apparel. They operate a content empire, not unlike Disney or Marvel. The only difference is that we're the characters living in the brand's fiction. Nike's recently published book, No Finish Line, features speculative fiction and essays on the next 50 years of design and sport. Its new podcast, No Off Season, explores mental health with star athletes. In China, Nike's now the official sponsor of the esports League of Legends Pro League. Working out at home has never been easier, thanks to the Nike Training Club series, now streaming on Netflix. And Nike even held an award show last year hosted by Drake. Like an entertainment layer on top of reality, Nike's story world continues to grow as consumers become active participants in its co-creation. Just last month, Nike launched Dot Swoosh, self-described as a new community experience designed to give you the opportunity to co-create the future of Nike through virtual fashion NFTs. Nike constantly promotes the idea of co-creation, but in reality, they're the ones who benefit from our work as consumers, refashioned as creative participants. So, what happens when a brand as popular as Nike shapes the attitudes of youth culture? I interviewed a handful of Gen Zers, including Austin, to find out. Here's what a few of them told me. I know a lot of these campaigns about diversity or sustainability are just to hide the fact that they get everything made in sweatshops and a lot of other gross stuff that they do. Another told me, I think their products are trustworthy and good quality, but I don't think they're an ethical company. And a third, I don't believe in a lot of, if any, multi-million-dollar brands' missions and commitments to do good, but if they're giving marginalized people a platform, that's good, even if it's small. And they're not alone in feeling this way. I know I'm implicated in it too, and I think we all are. When a brand is as ubiquitous and as loved as Nike, it can seem unchangeable. It's easy for us to look the other way and become complacent, especially when Nike claims to be a leader in, and I'm saying this in massive buzzword scare quotes, social impact and corporate social responsibility. Nike positions itself as a platform for youth culture, seducing emerging talent with the promise of global exposure and mainstream recognition. But Nike builds its influence and credibility on the backs of those very same subcultures. In other words, Nike sells the image of empowerment rather than empowerment itself. The result? Happy, powerless consumers that feel seen. Is Nike in the business of changing social norms or exploiting subcultures? Can it do both at the same time? Several years ago, in celebration of Pride Month, Nike launched a campaign centered around the art of voguing, featuring a ballroom dancer and transgender activist Naomi Maldonado. The campaign earned significant praise and media coverage, shining a spotlight on the ballroom scene, ushering it into the mainstream and foretelling popular TV shows like Pose, Legendary, and My House, as well as Beyoncé's Renaissance era. On its face, the campaign might seem well-intentioned, and in fairness to Nike, it helped give a voice to a marginalized community while celebrating the incredible artistry and athleticism of voguing. But I couldn't help but question what was in it for Nike. To quote sociologists Robert Goldman and Stephen Papson, Nike ads have garnered public admiration because they seem to speak in a voice of honesty and authenticity. Paradoxically, its aura of authenticity has been a product of its willingness to address alienated spectators about feeling alienated from media-contrived images. I want to be clear. What's at stake here isn't just financial. It's social, it's political, and it's cultural. It's a world where consumerism leaves us complacent, unable to imagine something better. It's a world where the teen on the street and the teen in the ad are increasingly entangled, and it's a world where brands know us better than we know ourselves. If there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's this. This isn't just a story about Nike or 17 magazine. It's about how our identities are shaped from a young age by brands. But by shining a light on the system that's been at work since the 1940s, my hope is that we don't just do it, and instead we think about what brands do to us. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Give it up one more time for Ian. Great job. Let's do the hug thing because we're just doing it now. And I was just imagining giving hugs and like the audience can see your face when I'm doing the hug. And I was like worried people were being kind of like scared when they were doing it. Anyway, congratulations, Ian. I need to ask the audience, who is wearing Nike right now? Hands, 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 hands. Okay. I thought there would be more. Who owns Nike? Okay, there we go. And you are wearing
Nike.
Nike. We love Nike. I own Nike. No, I don't own the company. I probably wouldn't be here. But what was I gonna ask you? Okay, what were you like as a teen?
I was a shy band geek.
Well, now you have a mic. What did you play?
Alto saxophone.
Okay. How is that different from a regular saxophone?
Oh, it's higher than a tenor and a bari, but lower than a soprano.
Okay. I was just quizzing you. Sorry. I was more like Tina when I was a teen. She was kind of like doing a lot of shopping and running around. And but yeah, that was really incredible. You, I feel like, did a lot of like archive research. Is that right? How did you feel about archive research?
It was really fun, and I was surprised by how much there is online. Like the Tina stuff came from the Smithsonian's digital archive, and there was just so much to dig into.
Yeah, because I feel like you really were digging in. You had those amazing quotes. So I was just really, really like, it was amazing to see this, like, my teenage life kind of like showed back to me. So I think you did a really amazing job and great presentation. You came from the branding world. Are you going back?
Hopefully with a clearer conscience and, a mission and a difference to make.
Okay, that's what we like to hear. Thank you, Ian. Give it up one more time for Ian.
How to badly experience a building, a non-exhaustive list. Only as form, only as space, only as style. As an isolated object, without seeing the power relations, without considering materials or labor, only through a camera lens, only through drawings, only through words, especially only through the architect's words. Only on a guided tour, only from the outside, without going into the bathroom. From the client's helicopter, only on a cloudless, sunny day, only through your eyes, only briefly, alone.
Okay, give it up for me and Nicholas Rapp on that. How to reimagine city life with Evelyn Maynard.
Good evening. So I'm Evelyn. I was born and raised in Santiago, Chile. When growing up, my father, a great lover of nature, planned unforgettable experiences into the wild, instigating in all of us, his siblings, a profound respect for the natural world. On the other hand, I have spent most of my adult life in New York City. Nature and the urban space are deeply intertwined in my personal life. My interest in design and architecture goes a long way. However, above all, I am interested in the way designers think and adapt to new challenges. Today, the construction and architecture trade are massive contributors to the environmental crisis. 2.5 billion more people are expected to live in urban areas by 2050, which will account for 230 billion square meters of new floor space by 2060. This is a huge layer of man-made mass to be added to the crust of the Earth. This is calling for transformative changes, since humanity has no future without a life-giving structure. In this scenario, how can we think differently about urban design, planning, and city management? Since the beginning of my research, I was looking for a single principle I could use as a lens to analyze the works of architects and urban planners. Upon finding a scientific concept called the critical zone, I had the hunch that it could represent a framework I could work with because of its big picture perspective. So what is the critical zone? The term was coined in 2001 by the American sedimentologist Gail Ashley. It is a new science created around the year 2006 in the United States. The discipline has been adopted by scientific communities around the world. Scientists define the critical zone as crucial for sustaining life. It is an area of the crust of the Earth, from the lower atmosphere to the underground aquifers, composed of everything contained in it, from insects to groundwater, to bacteria, to mountains and soil. These components act together as a system and are all interconnected to sustain life. Of all the functions that occur within this zone, the water cycle is the most crucial. But countless other cycles are also involved, and they all circulate above and under the surface of the Earth, from top to bottom. When you have compact urbanization, these functions are intercepted, including regenerating the soil, where water as a solvent is essential. The environmental crisis is but a manifestation of the disruptive way in which humans are interacting with the critical zone. Looking for the biggest urban scheme that addresses the environment, I found the work of Konjian Yu, a Chinese landscape architect who, without knowing of the critical zone, has worked in dialogue with this new knowledge. Today, Yu is one of the most prominent contemporary Chinese professionals in the field. He was born in China in 1963, comes from a peasant family, grew up during the Cultural Revolution, and learned to take care of the land with his father and grandfather in the tradition of agrarian Chinese culture. He first studied gardening at Beijing Forestry University. He then, in 1992, went to study at Harvard, returning to China in 1998. Upon return, he founded his office, Turnscape, today employing more than 500 people. Kongen Yu's vision is large. Over the last 20 years, Yu has developed one of the largest urban schemes created to control water, while at the same time protecting local ecologies. He intervenes in existing cities, not just in their peripheries, but to their core. Within a city, Yu looks for opportunities in empty lots, dumping places, brown fields, river lakes, and coastal banks. Yu prioritizes ecological and human subsistence, often citing Ian McHarg, an important Scottish landscape architect, who said, "Don't ask us about your garden, don't ask us about your bloody flowers. We're going to talk to you about survival." Yu developed the concept of sponge city, which primarily targets urban flooding. The sponge city concept consists of creating belts, green belts, permeable roads and wells to collect runoff and overflow to manage water in a productive way. It also retains water for future use, cleans up polluted water bodies, and improves natural ecosystems. Considering each place's specific ecology, geology, and hydrology and culture, each pond city design must be unique. At Turnscape, designers must first research what water did before people built the city to then make models of how water behaves within the built environment. Yu calls his design agrarian aesthetic inspired by Chinese peasant agricultural tradition. Opposed to landscape as mere ornamentation, he values ecological functionality first. That is why when opportunities are given, he also integrates food production into his designs. Yu is currently working on a landscape master plan for all China, trying to achieve his goal to protect 75% of the national land from urbanization by building an ecological infrastructure to safeguard natural processes. Kongen Yu is a shrewd communicator. Since the year 2000, seeing an opportunity in a country with a top-down political system, he promoted his sponge city concept throughout China, reaching politicians, mayors, and the like. His concept was adopted by the Chinese government in 2013, and so far over 250 cities have been designed using it. Kongen Yu's concept is respectful of the critical zone, especially because it allows upwards and downwards processes to occur. Yu's approach to the critical zone is a mixture of learning from his direct contact with the earth since childhood, a knowledge that was later reinforced with his academic studies in landscaping. When Kongen Yu returned to China from the United States in 1998, the Chinese construction boom was underway. He particularly went against the pervasive gray infrastructure of concrete used to control runoff and overflow. In it, he saw the destruction of all ecological systems. This is a global phenomenon. Contemporary cities, a network of gray infrastructure, is a mass that continues to grow. As it expands, it threatens the natural life-giving environment. To architecture and urban planning, understanding the critical zone creates the potential of integrating a more holistic framework for interventions on the land. The introduction of the critical zone as a subject of study could transform fundamental ways of thinking about the earth, And in architecture and urban planning, it could alter the notions of landscape, topography, and territory. Additionally, it could also affect working methods, environmental regulations, and education. As expected, exponential population growth will bring mounting demand for human settlements, dramatically increasing land use. We are confronting a problem at a large scale. The question is, are there any proposed solutions that have the required magnitude? Will the global community be ready to propose design solutions at the scale needed? Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Evelyn. Great job, Evelyn. Hugging. Come on over here. Come on over here. How are you feeling?
Good. Relieved.
Relieved, yes. This is the end. She did it. She did it. Wow. So what you were looking at some different urban planners and architects. What really drew you to Kang Yu? You spoke with him, right?
I did. Yeah, a very nice man, but I must say, he spoke with me because he's very interested in communicating his thoughts. I think he's really into saving the planet.
Not a bad thing to be into, I guess.
No, but he's a very nice man.
Yeah. I mean, great work from what I can see. I think we need to do a research trip to China.
I would love to go to see him, actually.
Let's make it work. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Oh, I was going to make a joke about how this department should be called the critical zone is our nickname. But I was going to do that at the beginning, but now I've already started talking to you.
I got you sick with the critical zone.
I did keep telling Evelyn to cut down the critical zone description part again and again, but I thought it worked great. I thought it was just perfect. You did a really amazing job, and we were so happy to have you in the program. Thank you so much. Give it up one more time for Evelyn. Thank you.
How to spark joy. Light a match. Glitter bomb your bathroom. Feel the breeze dance in your arm hair. Compliment a stranger. Squeeze your friends. Spy something round. Spot something colorful. Inflate a balloon. Belt a song badly. Dance like nobody's watching. Dye your hair. Find sunlight winking in a puddle. Learn something new. Get dirt under your nails. Fake laugh until it's real. Read the end. Relish in good food. Relish in dessert after bad food. Stretch. Fill your lungs. Forget your phone. Sunbathe. People watch. Put on socks fresh from the dryer. Try eyeliner. Smile. Dance like everyone is watching. Don't give a fuck.
Thank you, Brooke. We'll be wearing eyeliner next time you see me. Next, we have How to Draw Conclusions with Lucas Albrecht. Give it up for Lucas.
Hello. How's it going, y'all? All right, let's get going. I'd like to look at something together. It's something I spent the past year looking at, trying to figure it out. It's in this panel, but it's not the whole panel. And it's not just in this panel. It's kind of a reoccurring thing that shows up in thousands of comics. And though it's always popping up, it never sticks out. It's so woven in the graphic vernacular that maybe most wouldn't notice or care just how weird it is. But I've been thinking about comics my whole life. My earliest literary diet was a mix of my uncle's American superhero collection and my dad's Belgian almanacs. And the TV I watched was dominated by animated adaptations of Japanese manga. And then I drew it all. These formal ideas forged my visual literacy, teaching me how to read and think while also setting up a lifelong relationship. As I've grown up, my taste has diversified and intensified. Sorry to say, but I love comics as a form and as a medium. And in this image, sunken into the blacks of the background, I recognize something I'm captivated by. It's a replicable, idiosyncratic brushing strategy. It's a background element that doesn't just do background things. It's lurking, bubbling ink, and every time I think I know what I'm looking at, another angle presents itself. I kind of resists any box I try to push it into. What is it doing and why does it keep showing up? What role does it play in telling a story or drawing a panel? How does it behave? What can it tell us about the world that created comics and the world that comics create? There are so many questions in whatever inkwell those marks come from, a deliberate negotiation of perhaps everything comics can do. And maybe more. I know I see more. I see an American story about power. If interrogated enough, I wonder what these marks could confess to. Sorry, y'all. I am very off. Clickety click.
How to do something new.
Okay. There's been a technical difficulty.
Sick.
Hang on to your seats.
If I could sing,
this
I
is
would.
when I start singing. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
No, okay. Next time.
As everyone could tell, that was definitely not my fault. And if it was, explain to me how later. This may be a good time to officially introduce you to the mark that I'm talking about. It's called the Kirby Crackle. And this example is one of many over the past 80-some years. It first started appearing in comic books by Jack Kirby, though we can't give him all the credit. For the larger part of mainstream American comics history, comics have been made in something like a production line, with writers, pencilers, inkers, letterers, and colorists. Sip break. Kirby was, however, a pioneer. He was one of the medium's major innovators and one of its most prolific and influential creators. He was born over 100 years ago and has been gone for almost 30, but more on him later. For a brief history, proto-crackles started popping up as early as the 1940s in stories about multidimensional fascists. Then, more mature crackles graduated to wholesome tales of sci-fi optimism, until and retiring by Kirby's hand under the weight of impending apocalypse in his last book. Only the crackle didn't go away when Kirby stopped drawing. It's one of the many reasons I find the crackle so captivating. This little graphic artifact has made its way into various characters in many stories by all kinds of artists put out by different publishers. It even made its on-screen animated debut recently. Which is weird because of how comic booky it seems to me. It's an ink-based phenomenon. It's so idiosyncratic but not bound to much beyond the superhero genre. It looks like it would be a graphic meme, but it has stuck around too long to be tied to an era. It seems to want to describe a certain kind of space, only it's flattening, and inconsistent with what it kind of seems to represent. It's elusive and it's slippery. Only the Kirby Crackle does that while being immediately recognizable and never out of place. So in my search for meaning, I started with comics' own theoretical tools. And I think the simplest way to define it is as its own proprietary kind of black spotting. The fill-in of areas with black ink to direct attention and composition, only that doesn't help us explain why it's used and when it's forgotten when it isn't. Another way to define it would be as emanata. explained by Mort Walker's seminal 1980 text Lexicon of Comicana as unrealistic pictorial elements emanating from a character symbolizing something about that character, such as sweat drops from anxiety or a question mark for confusion. However, to be a monada, it would need to communicate something directly about the characters and things it enshrouds, but it doesn't. Though it would be difficult to say what it is that the crackle evokes, it's obviously evocative. Okay, let's revisit the most important hand in its creation, Jack Kirby. He was purposeful in connecting to the public and writing stories that sold. He has created characters that are still dominating popular culture, like Captain America, Thor, and Black Panther, yet his name is rarely brought up outside of comic books fandom. He wrote new legends and gave us new gods, American gods, who instead of wearing halos were enshrouded in a crackling aura. Jack Kirby was born in New York City during World War I. He had a violent upbringing and in the New York Lower East Side tenement buildings, which felt like a lifelong boot camp preparing him for his own eventual deployment. Kirby landed on Omaha Beach 2.5 months after D-Day. Instead of getting a propaganda job like most of his fellow comic book artists, he would be made a scout, being sent ahead of the infantry to map out areas still untrodden by the Allies. War is both a backdrop in the lives of Golden Era comic book creators and a pertinent topic for a populist medium. When the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb in Hiroshima in 1945, President Harry Truman described it as the harnessing of the basic power of the universe. The public at the time was ill prepared to understand the meaning of the fissioned atom. A concerted effort, first by the global scientific community, then by the U.S. Office of Censorship, had led to a suppression of information around the topic in the hopes to prevent abuses. This unresolved relationship with nuclear knowledge empowered the fictions about it. What would this new world, a world of limitless energy, mean? Juxtapose the hope in scientific possibility with the doom of nuclear apocalypse, and you get the gist of Jack Kirby's life. But is that what the crackle is? Maybe we need to break it down a little further. If we just look at the crackle, how much of the image is still there? What exactly do we lose? And the opposite. If we take it away, what changes? Is it any less galactic? Any flatter? Is it any less evocative? Any more or less nuclear? Or is it just not the same image? Take the rest away, and we could argue to have the same general composition of the panel. Maybe that's also true without the crackle in it. The truth is that we only have the panels to tell us about the fictional world a comic book creates. Comic books, like all products of design, rely on our expectation. They teach us how to learn them. They also are complicit in creating those expectations in the first place. It's difficult to negotiate the behavior of each of these individual traces in any given panel. It's just not how comics work. But why did the crackle take the shape it did? In 1962, Martin Schmidt captured the public's imagination with the first images of a quasar. A quasar is an extremely luminous active galactic nucleus powered by a supermassive black hole with mass ranging from millions to tens of billions of solar masses surrounded by a gaseous accretion disk. That's a very complicated idea stacked on a more complicated idea. For most people, it's indiscernible from magic. The images that the scientist Martin Schmidt offers successfully fill in the gap in understanding with wondrous galactic pointillism. These images captured the public's imagination and perhaps Kirby's. So again, what is the crackle? What does it describe? What power does it hold? Ultimately, I return to my oldest sense-making strategy. I picked up a brush and I retraced history to see what conclusions I could draw. Only to be back here looking at this image and asking, what is the Kirby crackle? Thank you.
Way to go, Lucas. Way to go. Bring it in, bring it in. Okay, wait, you're standing where I was standing. I don't know. I just want it to be like it always has been. Wow, how do you feel?
about this, or I'm good. I don't know. Yeah, great.
You were kind of like working on this like in the green room like until the very last minute. Was that how you typically work?
Yeah, it's never too late to make it better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally coming up with my questions and I'm going to ask like seconds before I go up. So I also kind of thrive in that environment. And what do you have an iPad? What were you reading off that?
In order to guarantee the opportunity to improve it at the last second, one may rely on technologies that adapt, unlike printed paper.
There we go. Boo, printed paper. We're coming for you. Well, that was a really incredible presentation. I learned a lot about comics through you. I feel like you kind of came into the program being like, everyone knows about comics, and then we kept being like, you actually have to like tell us about what comics are. Has it been hard for you to like figure out how to talk to us non-comic people?
I think it's been harder to wrap my head around why I cared and what the story was and how it related to anything that anyone would want to think about. Though mostly it was about me and the page and that relationship and sussing out how there was a way in and a way out. So no, it wasn't about you.
It wasn't about me?
Royal you, I don't know. The royal, yeah.
Well, I'm forever going to remember the word Kirby or the phrase Kirby Crackle. It's been ingrained in it sounds like a cereal to me, but and it's making me hungry. Which reminds me we have to kind of get moving. So thank you so much, Lucas. That was incredible. Give it up one more time for Lucas. And yeah, let's keep it moving.
How to write for the ear. Write like you talk.
How to ask an authentic interview question. You've done your research, read the books, watched the videos, and prepared your questions. Even so, there inevitably comes a moment when your mind goes totally blank. You think, it's curtains. But life is a fine teacher. Fearing that you've lost everything is often the right place to be. You can't hide behind your research. You have to be totally attuned to the present moment. From this place of uncertainty, you're forced to be authentic. Since you've temporarily forgotten everything, all you have left are your spontaneous questions. As a teacher of mine once said, not knowing is deepest.
Thank you, Lital and Adam. Last but not least of the thesis presentations, we have How to Justify Empire with SD Bagos.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so hi, I'm Esti Bagos, and today I'll be presenting part of my research on Philippine cultural diplomacy, titled Actively Remembering Tahanan, Speculating a Redesign of the 1904 World's Fair Philippine Exhibit. You're probably wondering what tahanan means. In Filipino, tahanan means home. My home is the Philippines, an archipelago of over 7,100 islands located in Southeast Asia. Before leaving home for the US, I worked as a museum educator in Manila. This informed my interest in how historical narratives are crafted because I saw how disinformation and historical revisionism plagued my country. Museums helped shape these narratives. While museums remain responsible for objects, they're now more than ever responsible for the stories they tell, both the good and the bad. Museums all over the world are now confronting their colonial origins. Headlines in news outlets now read, Vatican agrees to return pieces of Parthenon to Greece, dozens of artifacts seized from the Met, Germany begins return of Benin bronzes to Nigeria. These headlines are part of a trend in which cultural institutions in the global West have started repatriation of cultural artifacts to their countries of origin, an act of restorative justice for wrongs committed by colonizers against colonized communities. As an act of digital repatriation, Mapping Philippine Material Culture was launched in 2021 as an ongoing global inventory of Philippine cultural artifacts, covering objects made in the Philippines and objects related to the Philippines. During the Project Zoom launch, it was revealed that 90% of Philippine cultural objects are located outside the country. Out of the 90%, only 5% have been publicly displayed. So where did these objects go? Looking at the global inventory today, most of them seem to be in storage everywhere else, except in the Philippines. At the Geneva Ethnography Museum in Switzerland, 319 objects. Museum of World Cultures in Frankfurt, 526 objects. British Museum in London, 1,165 objects. Harvard Peabody Museum, 3,550 objects. The Peabody is one of several museums in the US with large collections of Philippine material culture. Most of these objects have found their way into the US through imperialist conquests. These were often donated or loaned for study in museums, brought to America out of an obligation felt by the colonizer to preserve the culture of the colonized. That being said, the United States has been presented as a custodian rather than aggressor and invader of the Philippine Islands. I grew up believing in this idea of America as a savior. Me being here stems from that belief. At home, I grew up speaking English. In school, I learned that the US saved the Philippines from Spanish and Japanese colonizers. And throughout the year, my family has kept pressuring me to stay in the US because there was a promise of a better life here. I believe that the US saved the Philippines because that's what I was taught. And through my research, I was surprised to find that US museums have supported this narrative. The lack of exhibitions with Philippine objects reinforced that. And that's when I realized museums can design historical narratives. In my research of Philippine artifacts across different US museums, I found that 3 museums in the East Coast, the Penn Museum in Philadelphia, Harvard's Peabody Museum in Cambridge, and the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in DC, all point to a single place in history: the Philippine Exposition at the 1904 World's Fair. According to World's Fair historian Robert Rydell, these fairs were specifically publicized as the world's universities for the public to learn about the world's cultures. The 1904 fair celebrated the centennial of the Louisiana Purchase Agreement, an acquisition that doubled US territory. For my research, I spent spring break at St. Louis, Missouri, walking through Forest Park, which you can see here. Forest Park was the original site of the fair. I got a sense of scale and experienced what it was like for visitors to walk for hours through the 1,240-acre fairgrounds. In literary magazine Lapham's Quarterly, Harvard historian Walter Johnson has called the 1904 World's Fair the largest human zoo in history, citing how the 47-acre Philippine reservation was the 1904 fair's ideological core. Covering only 4% of the fairgrounds, the Philippine exhibit was mounted with an allocated budget of $1.5 million. Today, this amounts to about $33.9 million. To get to the Philippine exhibit, close to exhibitions on livestock, agriculture, forestry, and anthropology, visitors had to go through all the Grand Beaux-Arts architecture, a variety of exhibitions, and even cross a bridge over the moat. Visitors saw what was deemed as progress before reaching the Philippine exhibit. Despite being located at one of the farthest points from the fair's entrance, the Philippine exhibit turned out to be one of the most popular attractions at the fair, with 99 out of every 100 visitors paying an extra fee to visit. And this made me wonder, how was Filipino identity represented in the 1904 World's Fair? We have to remember that the Philippine exhibit was post-war propaganda, created to present the latest addition to American territory 5 years after the end of the Spanish-American War. It served to justify the war and the American occupation of the Philippine Islands. In 1902, then Governor of the Philippines, William Howard Taft, issued a circular letter that instructed the design of the Philippine exhibit. For the anthropology section, it stated, "We wish to have tribal and racial exhibits in every detail, showing the state of culture and the growth of civilization." And so, over 1,000 Filipinos performed and literally lived at the fair, with different ethno-linguistic groups presented like a human zoo. This allowed visitors to see and understand people in racial terms, emphasizing the need for American governance to educate and civilize. It was evident in the display of the Igorotes, a term that flattens the identities of several tribes from the Philippines Cordillera region. They were presented in the fair as headhunters and dog eaters, with daily performances of dog stew preparation taken out of religious context. In contrast, there was also an exhibition of the Philippine Constabulary, 725 US-aligned Filipino soldiers performing military exercises. You especially see the contrast between the constabulary and the Igorotes in this pamphlet for the exhibition, showing the possibility of civilization in the Philippines under American rule. As I continued to unearth the details of the fair, I began to understand how it justified imperialism and saw how it made an impact in the decades that followed. I saw this through St. Louis-based Filipino-American visual artist Ria Unson. Ria migrated to the US in the mid-80s as a teenager. She's a descendant of Ramon Ochoa, one of the student guides at the 1904 Philippine exhibit. Referring to her past, she said, "I was so assimilated. I didn't have a voice in the world, let alone in my art. I couldn't find that thing to talk about because no one was talking about it. I realized then how certain narratives could potentially be omitted until they become forgotten." In attempting to trace the site of the Philippine exhibit, I learned that the area is now a mix of commercial establishments and an exclusive residential community. This is Concordia Park, part of the site of the Philippine exhibit. In Filipino, we have a saying, "Tahan na." It's a gentle way of consoling someone in tears to stop crying. It's fascinating to see it embedded in the word tahanan, home. Home is the place where one goes to stop crying. But what happens when traces of home can't be found? Tahan na were the same words I used to console myself when I realized that there were no markers of the Philippine exhibit in sight at Concordia Park. It was as if it never existed, as if we never existed. I felt erased. To quote Filipino visual artist Pio Abad, "How can we never forget unless we actively remember? How can a colonized country like the Philippines not be forgotten in history unless museums make an effort to actively remember?" And I thought speculating a redesign of the Philippine exhibit today with objects from the 1904 fair could present the possibility I imagined for the museum. That is, the museum is a site for active remembering. It can rekindle cultural memory to bring stories that have been buried in the past into the future. We shouldn't justify empire because that involves some form of denial. Instead, we should be accepting and confronting difficult historical truths. Confronting difficult historical realities is a form of active remembering. The Peabody Museum, for example, does this through the implementation of an ethical stewardship model, leading to the creation of policy and practice that actively confront the museum's problematic history. But because this takes time and manpower, digital restitution has also emerged as a form of reparation for injustice. Museums have shifted to producing digital material for global accessibility, from digitizing artifacts to developing online exhibitions. Designing these platforms for digital access can allow previously colonized countries like the Philippines to see what is out there so they can plan ahead and prepare for the eventual return of these objects. But is going digital enough? Shouldn't these objects be brought out to be seen, to be remembered by the community they belong to? More importantly, does digitizing an artifact justify the violence deemed necessary for its acquisition? Through my research journey, I understood that the personal is political. My way of seeking out justice is in unearthing the stories of my people. It is through active remembering, in crafting stories, and engaging with communities that long-forgotten memories can be restored. We don't have to let history happen passively. Instead, we can actively design history. And moving forward, my hope is to do exactly that. Whatever it is, whether it's publishing my work, curating exhibitions, creating a podcast, or even at this moment, standing on this stage today, I know that this is just the beginning, so let's actively design history together. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Keep it going for SD. Let's actively design history together. Wow, that was a really powerful presentation. Spring break in St. Louis. That is commitment. That is commitment. How was it?
I experienced getting locked down inside the library because there was a shooting nearby.
Okay, lockdown library shooting. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay. You're leaving us. Yeah, 3 months. What are you going to do in these 3 months? You put up a lot on the screen of stuff you have to do. Podcasts, publications, like museums and memorials. Like you've got a lot of work to do. What are you planning on doing?
All the things. So anyone who wants to collaborate, let's.
SD needs collaborators. Is anyone here willing to collaborate? Okay, there we go. There we go. All it takes is one. Adobo chocolate chip cookies. You made those. We're gonna miss them. What? Oh, do you cook a lot?
No.
Okay, so just the cookies.
He's here, so they can attest to that.
Hello. Okay, but do you guys cook a lot? Okay, so you guys, yeah, and SD does the eating of it. That's how it works in my family. So. Well, SD, that was really amazing. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Give it up one more time for SD.
How to harvest honeysuckle. Where I grew up in North Carolina, honeysuckle grew wild. In the summertime, we would spend at least half an hour of every day sipping the nectar from the white and yellow flowers on flourishing vines. Here's how. Find the most fragrant patches, which are the juiciest. Carefully pluck off one of the trumpet-shaped blossoms at its base. Pinch off the end to reveal the stamen. Slowly pull out the stamen, which will carry 1 drop of super sweet nectar with it. Sip and enjoy. Class of 2023, remember to stop and smell the flowers, and to sometimes eat them.
Okay, back to Molly Heinz, everybody.
All right. Thank you all for sticking with us. We are almost done. A few announcements before our concluding conversation. So I wanted to say a special thank you to SD for that powerful presentation. Thank you to all of our students for wonderful presentations. Thesis advisors, what did you think? They really brought it. Yes, thank you to our students. Back to SD. I wanted to announce that SD is going to be receiving the 2023 SVA Paula Rhodes Medal from our department. Yes, congratulations. Each SVA graduate department names one student whose work has been consistently outstanding for this award, and we are delighted to acknowledge SD's work in this way and celebrate her important research that you just heard about. Now, some of you know that all through the year we tease students with the question, so what? Pushing them to think about why their research investigation is relevant today and really why should people care. But here we are at the end of the year, and the question becomes, now what? As Eric has asked several times. So what do students do with this fantastic work in progress that deserves a bigger audience? Last year, William Myers, an alum of the class of 2010, reached out to me to propose that his new nonprofit organization, the Museum of 21st Century Design, and our department post launch a postgraduate fellowship precisely intended to help bring students' thesis research to life out in the world beyond the writing and podcasts they do with us for the MA. The Museum of 21st Century Design, or M21D, is a virtual entity that creates programming, exhibitions, and publications focused on issues around sustainability and social justice, partnering with bricks and mortar institutions to bring these things to life and to broad audience. At our department, we saw this as an opportunity to support our alums and give a platform to historically underrepresented voices in design research and writing. So we've done some fundraising. Thank you, Susan Merritt, alum from 2015. Thank you to Superscript, and thank you to SVA's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, led by Jarvis Watson, who's here today. Thanks, Jarvis. And we are establishing a fellowship through the SVA Visual Arts Foundation with an annual award of $9,000 and 24/7 desk space in our department. And today I'm pleased to announce that the first fellow is class of 2022 MA Jared Dalcourt, who aims to turn his excellent thesis work, Stereotypographic Black Men and the Visual Culture of the United States, into an exhibition. And we have a little snippet from his
investigation into visual culture, including typography, alongside negative visual representations of black men, has led me to the idea that the design of this black brute stereotype, which is the American antebellum equivalent to today's hip-hop thug stereotype, has evolved from a wood-cut typographic ornament from fugitive slave era America. That's what we have here. This stereotype still impacts the personal safety of not only black men, but most everyone in our current moment. So how does visual culture define black men, or how has this so-called blackness or black heteronormative masculinity been designed or been visualized in the American imagination?
Okay, more to come. Jared, I think, is here today. Jared, I think I saw you come in. Stand up, Jared. All right. Congrats. Yes. All right. So this time next year, we look forward to hearing about the progress on your exhibition, Jared. All right. With M21D, we want this to be an annual award to a recent grad, and we'd like to launch several fellowships on multiple tracks, not just one. Exhibitions, conferences, books, documentaries even. If this is something you might be interested in supporting in any way, whether through advising or a tax-deductible contribution to the Visual Arts Foundation, please see me at the reception or contact us at designresearch@sva.edu. So, and just a final note before we continue, if you're intrigued by what you heard today and our students' work, we still do have a few spaces left for the MA starting on site in the fall, as well as our upcoming hybrid summer intensive program. And in addition, this summer we're launching a new program with SVA Continuing Education on writing critically about fashion design. So more information on all of these is available on the back of your program. All right, now I think I'm handing the mic over to Alex, Eric.
Me.
Eric, there you are.
Surprise. Okay, we have, hold on.
How to finish a first draft. Stop thinking about it so much.
Okay, that's actually very important. So I'm glad I didn't interrupt that one. Okay, yeah, we have a we're calling it a mini panel, but it's going to be fun and entertaining, and it's happening right now, and it's our final moment of the night. We are introducing how to launch a publication with Pierre-Alexandre Deleuze from Pinup, Document Journal Mastermind, Nicholas Kemper from the New York Review of Architecture, and Tiffany Zhao from Untapped. So welcome them to the stage. And I am going to hand my mic to Alex. To Brooke to Alex.
From Brooke to me.
Tiffany. Do you want to sit? Do you want to be in the middle?
I've been told to be here.
Oh, you've been told. Okay. Go ahead.
Hello again. All right, I want you to imagine that the lights are low, which they are. There's romantic music. And we're on a hot date with publishers. This is New York City. This is a big deal. Hi, folks.
Hi.
Hello.
So I have to assume that to get involved with publishing in the first place, you have to have something of a love affair with writers or writing. What authors or texts would you bring up, let's say, on a really hot date?
That's a different question than you asked us in the email.
Hey, I mean... I'm reading a book right now, actually, all about making days hotter, which is, I don't know if you've heard Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, gold classic, rereading Green Mars. And I actually really enjoyed, last week, he literally had a chapter that was 50 pages all about just meetings, and it was people meeting together to talk about how to structure Martian society. And they go through every single little detail of it, and they're a disaster. They're just irresolvable, irreconcilable differences that just can't work out. And actually, it was very reassuring because we spent a lot of time in meetings ourselves as kind of a collective enterprise to try to put things together. And you're like, you know what? Like, you don't have to solve everything. The important part is that you talk it through and you keep on working on it. That's good advice. I feel like when I'm in that situation, I offer somebody a cherry Coke. That usually helps.
Okay, well, I prepared based on the question that was asked. It didn't have the hot date part, and I tried to do it for the audience, but I have 3 that I would offer.
Lay it on it.
Lay it on. So probably one of my favorite books is If You Want to Write by Brenda Euland. Does anybody know that book? It was published in the late 30s, I think, and Brenda lived in New York in Greenwich Village back then, or in her adult life, and was part of like the bohemian time, and she loved William Blake and she loved Vincent van Gogh, and the whole message of the book is like everyone is important, everyone is interesting and has something good to say. And she always told the truth, and she never did anything that she didn't want to do. And it's just a really nice, simple reminder, I think, of you have everything in you to do what you want to do if you just have the courage to tell the truth. She also taught writing classes a lot to people from all walks of life, and the whole book is just excerpts from essays that her students did, and it's really nice. And the other one I'll say is that I read obituaries because Myra Coleman says that she did it, and I like her. And she says she always reads the obituaries because there's so much life in obituaries. But it's true. Every Sunday I make myself read all of them that are in the paper, and it is quite inspiring. Yeah.
I love that. Folks, are we going on a second date here with these guys? Yes? Tiffany Chow, hello.
Hi.
Editor-in-chief of an online publication that reaches about 15,000 readers. You release stories every Monday, but your whole issues drop monthly and are theme-based. It's called Untapped, and it's only 3 months old.
As of yesterday, it's 3 months old.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Kemper, welcome. Publisher of a print publication that reaches nearly 2,000 readers. Issues come out every 2 months. And it's called New York Review of Architecture, and it started in 2019. Welcome. 4 years old. 4 years old, yeah. Well, why don't you, let's maybe start with you, Tiffany. Tell us a couple of things this audience should know about your publication.
Ooh, okay. Some people here were at the launch party, I think, which is cool. I can't see everybody, but...
I was there.
You were there, yeah.
Didn't you organize it? Oh, no. That was, yeah. We had a launch party last Saturday.
Right. This was in February. Yeah.
She came to our launch party too, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's a favor. Yeah. But I really wanted to be there. I think you really wanted to be at mine too.
That's true.
Yeah.
See, the love is happening.
Yeah. So Untapped is, we launched 3 months ago, which is really crazy to think that. But we're published by a brand. We're published by a design company that's called Henry Built. And they create kitchen systems and furniture. They've been around for about 20 years. It's super nice. But we don't feature any of their products or projects, even though they are our funder. Instead, we tell stories about people that follow an approach that's central to this company, central to Henry Built, which is using knowledge from the past that's been forgotten or overlooked and combining it with new ideas as a means to improve our lives. So that focus is what connects the two ventures, and that's it. But so there's many positives, I guess, to that, in the sense that we don't have any advertisers. We never will. If anything, we'll probably become a nonprofit. But, you know, and I think for the brand, it's an opportunity for them to show that they care about things beyond just the products they make, and they care about contributing to the kind of critical and, you know, critical discourse around architecture and design. So all of our stories are really long form, like 1,500, you know, 2,000 words. We work with a range of critics, a lot in America, but also overseas too. And yeah, just look at things that look back to look forward, our tagline. So
great, thank you. And Nicholas. We had a hard time coming up with a mission statement. Just lots of unresolved meetings. So our tagline is New York Review of Architecture reviews architecture in New York.
That seems pretty solid.
It's true. But I mean, part of the thought was that there was a tendency in architecture publications to kind of go with an obscure name and obscure graphics and thereby prove that you're cool. And so if you were to pick the most boring possible name that tells you exactly what it is and where it's doing it, and then kind of commit to accessible graphics that are pretty straightforward, then that kind of both kind of could take a perhaps unclaimed ground, but also on top of that create a platform where the content itself would be the thing that could, by which we could succeed or fail on the strength of the writing.
Austin, does that measure of coolness check out? Okay, 2 thumbs up. So starting your own publication to me seems like a real boss move. Like, for example, you can tell other people what to do. But set us straight here. What kind of power or freedom has this given you, or has it?
My philosophy of, I guess, power or responsibility is the more of it you have, the less people will give you more power or responsibility, the more kind of reliable they think you're going to be, which is to say you become more and more constrained. So actually, in some ways, but I mean, the really cool thing about publishing from the get-go is that you can see something and just like, oh, that is a neat thing. Let's try to bring that to our audience, and let's find a way to do that. And as your audience becomes larger, then your standards become higher, and you have to really make sure that you can work with the person. But also, we've been very fortunate that our resources have also become larger, and so we are able to, therefore, put a lot more into elevating pieces than we were at the very beginning.
I was trying to think of a piece of advice that someone gave me, and I think it was you about this. But
Great.
We were talking one time, and in terms of the power and responsibility, like Untapped has a budget, and it's bigger than any one I've ever had in my whole life as working for more traditional magazines and things like that. And I think we were talking about that, and you were like, well, you better do a good job or something like that.
Oh dear.
It's a really big opportunity in a way to like create something that's good and needed and well done, and like I feel like that is very much a responsibility of mine to live up to that with each issue that we do. Yeah.
Thanks. So we talked a little bit earlier about what's on your mind. And one of you said making room for criticism. The other one talked about building trust. And I feel like making room for criticism and trust may be connected. And I'm curious, given the state of publishing, why do these particular issues matter to you?
Well, I think that in my experience working in publishing, it has changed a lot to being very dictated by people outside of yourself. So in my experience, it changed what I wrote about, and it changed like how long the stories could be and what I could say, because the person might be giving the publication money. And that kind of pay-to-play dynamic is, it's fine, but like it doesn't allow for the kind of criticism that, or even just honesty that I think a lot of readers want. So I think that kind of relates to Brenda Euland's message of like, always tell the truth. And I think there's not a lot of space to do that on a big level. Like, I remember when we were brainstorming about what this journal would be, me and the CEO of Henry Built, he was like, well, there's no publications that do criticism. And I'm like, yes, there are. They're just not.
Thank you.
Yeah, like, well, it's just like, they're just not when you like are in line at Whole Foods looking at the magazine racks, like while you're waiting to check out. Like, they definitely exist. They're not.
We do aspire to be in Whole Foods in the magazine.
Okay.
I wish that for you.
I'll let him know.
Thank you.
But it's just, yeah, so it's like, yeah, giving people, making it more accessible in a way, putting it out there, and yeah.
Also airports.
Also airports. Yeah. Salons.
The dream. What was the question again?
Well, this goes back a little bit to what you were telling us about choosing the name for the review. Trust, making room for criticism. Why do those things feel particularly important maybe right now?
I guess also an important thing that's kind of in our DNA from the get-go, we started off very short. So the first issue was literally a single 11 by 17. So kind of something deadpan about being like New York Review of Architecture, and the nameplate took like, a fifth of the page, and there were only 2 pages. And every story actually jumped, so it says continued on page 2, which was the back. So there's all, but I guess 2 things. First off, in order to preserve our independence, we always had an emphasis on subscriptions and like selling it and making sure that people therefore valued it, and also making sure, and it remains this, we have now some substantial sponsorship. The sponsors have no editorial control, but our single largest source of revenue are subscriptions, which is really cool. It's actually kind of crazy. Like, I don't know, our first issue budget was $1,200, and I was like, wow, if we can ever get to $1,200 a month, that'll be great. And now we're like much higher than $1,200 a month, and I'm like, this is not nearly enough publishing. But the trust. So yeah, one, by selling subscriptions, you're being paid to do what you're supposed to be doing, and serving your readers. And second, criticism. I think in our DNA was we really wanted to pay attention to what's going on. And so from the get-go, and still there's a huge emphasis on always incorporating reported work. And we have something called Skyline, where we literally send people out to events to do little write-ups, and take down notes and quotes, and really try to foreground what's happening out there. And I think there is a phrase that may or may not have made it into our DNA that is, in order to be heard, first listen. So really, instead of saying, here is like our writer's hot take, it was more like, here is what other people are saying in the design world, and we're delivering it back to you. And we're doing a good job of presenting it in a concise and manageable fashion.
So it is a kind of a privilege, isn't it, to be an editor, to sit in this seat, to see so many stories in the making. Can you give us a sneak peek to what's going to be happening for both of your publications in the very near future? Stories, initiatives, anything?
That actually makes me want to talk about something else. Can I do that?
I mean,
dodge the question.
Take
it
us
makes
away.
me think of like being in the editing process and what comes into the inbox sometimes, like in terms of how it can be better, or surprising things that happen when you work with people that you think are going to be great, and then they're late, or they don't fact check, or they didn't do the job. And I always find that really interesting and unacceptable in a lot of ways.
Well, I don't know who said this, and it may actually have been about Rem Koolhaas, the architect, but
being a journalist is growing up in the public eye, which is to say that as a writer, you actually grow over time. And the family, the village, so to speak, that helps you grow is, in fact, in large part, the editorial team and everyone involved with making a story happen, including sources. So I think that, yeah, I can empathize with what you're saying, including all those stories that you wish you could run and you can't for all sorts of complicated reasons. Yeah, yeah. Nicholas. Well, this is actually something we've not, and we won't publicize for a long time, so don't tell many people, but it's possible we might actually end up working with Tiffany on it too. We are going to have possibly, if the Graham funds it, a pop-up publication called Los Angeles Review of Architecture. Acronym LARA.
Yeah, we have to. Now it has to happen.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to help fund that, you should talk to me about it. Issue budget is no longer $1,200 per issue, but can be done. And our artistic art director, her name is Laura Coombs. So in the masthead for that, she wants to be called Laura Coombs. Noted. So I think the emphasis today has been on practicality, on takeaways. Can you each give us 3 things we should keep in mind if we want to start our own publication?
Okay. 1, I would say take the time to figure out what you want to do and how you want to be involved. But also I would say, like, related to that is take the job. If you get offered an opportunity, I think it is worth testing it out to see how your writing works there, whether it's for a publication or an architecture firm or whatever. I think it can help hone craft. Okay, that was 1. 2 is to write a thoughtful email and not be afraid of who you're sending it to, because I think you'd be surprised who responds when it's done well. And then 3, I would just say be a good journalist and do those things. Turn in the best thing you can and do it on time and make sure it's factually correct. And that will go a long way, I think.
Thank you. Nicholas? Practicalities. Well, there's Adolphe Ox, the founding, or not quite the founding, but he was the publisher who made New York Times what the New York Times is. And his first publication was in Chattanooga, and it was literally a list of all the businesses in Chattanooga. And he went around and then sold it as, here's the list, and it made a lot of money. It made me think that essentially, like, any publication is essentially a list or a set of interlocking lists. And so think about, like, what is your list, or what are your interlocking lists, and how do they fit together, and who might be interested in those lists, and what are the practicalities of then fitting the lists together. So I've learned a lot about database management, actually, which is pretty cool. If anybody wants to talk about Airtable. I gave a little seminar about it for the first time last week to another publication, and they were like, Nicholas, you're a celebrity in our publication because you made our Airtable, because I set it up as a... yeah, if anybody knew, I have a double life as an Airtable specialist.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Let's see here. Other practicalities, 2 other practicalities. I guess, let me think.
What about the events? Throw a good party.
Oh, yeah, throw a good party. Yeah, we do that. Practicality number 2. We threw a great one last Saturday. I would highly recommend coming. The third one would be don't be afraid to, I guess, don't be afraid to have a very small publication, just in terms of, actually this is also not public information, but my wife and I have like a very small, we have an email list that we send out called Everything Bagels. That's our primary form of social media. That's like some friends and family on there. And it's one of our favorite things to, like, send out various random life updates. And it's like very hard, even when people say they want to be added to it and we're like, yeah, we'll add you to it, we just forget. So it's not like a world-conquering social media like other social media platforms. But that's created a great, I'll go to like weddings and they'll be like, oh, Nicholas, like I know all about your baby because of all of your, I love that update. And I'm like, great, fantastic. I am reaching, because that's the thing, like you can create these very intimate connections if you have something that only a few people are reading in a way that actually becomes in some ways more difficult once you're reaching more of a mass audience. And to really value like the quality of those connections.
Thank you. Were you folks taking notes? Because you heard it here. This is how you launch a publication: bagels, parties, and I think hard work. With that, I want to invite the class of 2023 back on stage. Thank you very much, Tiffany and Nicholas.
Should we leave the chair?
Okay, told you it was going to be short. That was amazing. That was amazing. And the reason we had this panel is because the class of 2023 is launching a publication. So they're going to come up here. Let's come on up. I can't be up here alone. So yeah, give it up. Yeah, just all kind of crowd, stand around. I think Ian's going to say a few words.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep this really short and sweet because I want to celebrate with everybody in the lobby. I'm sure all of us do. At the beginning of the symposium, Molly and Alex reiterated how a 9-month master's program is a whirlwind. And so what better thing to do while we're absolutely deep into writing our thesis, but to create a book. So I believe it was Tuesday, we met with Nicholas and other Nick and Sammy and Marianella from the New York Review of Architecture to create what is also our symposium, How to Nail a Hammer. And it was all about the practical process, the personal process of writing about design. And we did it. So there's copies in the lobby. I invite you to take one and explore it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. And that's our program. So give it up for the class of 2023. You've done an amazing job. Yes, revel in it. Okay, drinks, food, fun, lobby. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.